Lee Summit is your destination for big city vibes and small town charm.
Head to the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market, where local meets fresh. Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Lee Summit, Missouri.
Welcome to the Lee Summit Sign Department. We are going to walk you through our process from start to finish. We make signs as needed here. It's not like we just go out into the field and place a speed limit sign here, no parking here. Our traffic engineers, they go through and they'll do field studies. They'll send us down an engineering work order for us to go out, place new signs or remove signs as needed. Coming from the material, our blanks come in and they're just aluminum blanks. We can put our white, our red, our fluorescent yellow, green, whatever. And basically what it looks like is just that there. Throw it up into the roller. And once we got it covered, take it to our work table here, and Tim will cut the corners, cut all the access off to where it's lined up right. As far as the plotter and the software that we use, there's a street name sign there, and he's gonna go ahead and print that out on the plotter so you can see the plotter and how it operates and runs. There's standards for the height, even just on letters on the sign blank. Basically what we have on the computer there is it's pretty much set up to those. And it goes through, it's got a very small but sharp needle that goes through and cuts everything out, letter by letter. Once that's done cutting, our next stage would be bringing it over here. Currently picking out the sign letters right now. We call it weeding or picking or however you want to call it. Next, putting it on the transfer tape. Then after it's taped, we bring it over to the roller. That's where we apply it to the actual sign blank. And we'll roll it through one time just to get the air bubbles out. And the last stage is basically just taking the transfer tape off the front of it. And there's a finished product of the street name sign. We'll take you out to the field and show you our process that we go through. We're gonna go out and follow our sign guys, get something installed for you. This is where we check our underground utilities. Tim, you got AT&T?
AT&T's back here.
Evergy, Google, so we should be good to go. We normally put all of our stuff together out in the field. Then once the base is installed, we'll go ahead and put the post in there. We've come up to perfect. And that's how we do it. Simple. Quick.
You're invited to discover summer fun. Ride the waves in the wave pool. Jump off the diving boards. Take a dip in the Action River. And slide down the slides at our outdoor water park, Summit Waves. After a day in the sun, experience downtown Lee Summit. Enjoy gourmet pizza and delicious food for lunch. Then, cool down with handcrafted ice cream right around the corner. Summer at the Summit, Lee Summit, Missouri.
Traditionally, we think as police officers, those responding to law enforcement needs within the community. But honestly, we are there to serve our citizens, and our citizens do go into crisis. They do have mental health crises, and we're being called to those scenes on a regular basis. In order to help serve those citizens better, we did initiate the Crisis Intervention Team Program. These are officers that are specially trained to de-escalate crisis situations. Recently, we've brought co-responders onto the scene, licensed qualified mental health professionals housed within our police department, and they respond with those officers directly to those scenes where a crisis is occurring so they can interact with that citizen and get them the help they need right there on that scene.
The co-responders are either a bachelor or master level in a behavioral health related field. They wear plain clothes, they don't carry weapons or anything like that.
I have a police radio that I listen to all day. Listen for, those key words: mental health, behavioral health, crisis.
There's a lot of officers that just call for me. I have my own radio number.
I also have the ability to self-dispatch to them and say 982 is en route.
Officers en route, 914, Armstrong.
So typically I arrive after they've made it safe. I'll make contact and get kind of the rundown, and then I just kind of jump right in.
I'm like, hey, my name's Allison. I'm a mental health professional. I'm here to help you. I'm not here to take you to jail or arrest you.
Sometimes all a person needs is a voice, someone neutral, someone outside that, can listen. I do a lot of safety planning, including family, their support network, who's close to you. If they're home alone, who can come over and hang out with you today? Can we lock away your sharps? Can we put up your meds? Do you need meds? Can we get you over to the urgent care to get you assessed for your medications? Some of them also are like, oh, I'm so glad you came. This made me feel so much better.
Our main goal as co-responders is to, one, get people connected to the services that they need, and also divert from emergency rooms and jails.
And they almost get a different view of the police responding. That lets me know you care and the officers care.
Please, please, how can we help you?
My husband has...
In 2020, we had 722 mental health related calls for service. 2022, by that time, 1,479. These mental health related calls for service are increasing. How we're responding to that is increasing the number of crisis intervention team officers we have available, as well as the number of co-responders we have available to respond on these calls.
So what I think is important for the community to know about the co-responder program is that we're here, we exist. All you have to do when you call 911 is ask for us. Say, hey, I want a co-responder to respond to this crisis, and we'll go. I was really struggling about 8 years ago on my personal journey with mental health, and I met some amazing social workers and amazing programs that have helped me get to where I am today. I really couldn't see myself doing anything else. We want to help, and that's what we love to do.
So I had a client, we got a call, she had some suicidal ideations, and she really felt that she had nobody. And and getting to know her story and getting to know who comes around and sees you, well, then we found a support person, and they responded immediately. And we made a plan. I called back and checked on her in an hour, and then I checked on her in 2 hours. We were able to get her into the additional services to where she talks to someone every week or more. I just took a person that really just thought they had nobody and nobody would show up for them, and show them you do. And you'll be amazed who is in your corner if you just simply say, I need a little help.
Lee Summit has you covered for all of your summer fun. Head to the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market, where local meets fresh. Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Summer at the Summit, Lee Summit, Missouri.
Councilmember Hodges.
Thank you. I love where you guys are coming from. You're local and you're all kind of coming together. But where I'm struggling with from the last time that we talked about this, I think it was maybe October.
I actually grew up in my district. We moved here my sophomore year in high school. My parents still live in the same house, and I just went through high school here and then have stayed in Lee Summit ever since. The neighborhood that my parents live in is Canterbury. My favorite thing, and I still do to this day, is I love to go running. They have the best sidewalks. I feel like you can go for days. So now I still get to do that since I live not too far from them. I get to use those same routes that I took during high school, and it's just fun. All right, let's see it, Jess. Come on. We're a big soccer family. I love sports, I love to watch sports, and it's even more fun to watch sports when my kids are in it. I coach my middle daughter Josie's team, and I have since kindergarten. We do the basketball, we do softball, we're gonna do volleyball, and it's just so much fun. Do solemnly swear that I possess the following. Something that I would like to accomplish while on city council is to get more family activities here. You know, I don't want to have to be driving my family to, say, the Kansas side or any other city but my own. And I want to be able to invest in our city and make family memories in our city.
Open the public hearing in the matter of K1 Speed, Diventures,
Crack Shack, Blue Jeans Golf.
Councilmember Hodges.
I just want to say thank you for bringing this to Lee Summit. I grew up at this. My grandpa would take us there, so I'm excited that now I can take my kids there.
Bill number 23-0, pre-construction services for the downtown Market Plaza project.
I'm just as excited as everybody else about the downtown marketplace. I'm extremely excited about the community that it's going to bring, bringing more family things to do to the city and right in the heart of it.
When you presented the numbers, the first time you came to us, it was 25.5%, and then
you know, people were like, oh, you know, being on council, it's not a lot of work, not a lot of... I think it was a bit of a surprise when there's so much info that you realize you just don't know. Even something as simple as sidewalks. It's like you don't realize how much goes into something like that. After a couple months, I'm like, okay, I'm finally, you know, catching the groove of how things work, learning new things, but also feel like I've got some things under my belt as well. It's been a great experience so far.
Good afternoon, and I'd like to call the Wednesday, August 9th meeting of the Community and Economic Development Committee to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Edson?
Here.
Vice Chair Pryor?
Here.
Councilmember Hodges?
Here.
Councilmember Felker? Planning Commissioner Arth?
Here.
Thank you. And Councilmember Felker got hold of me a few minutes ago. He should be here shortly. So, could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Chair,
Yes.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second. I have a motion by Councilmember Hodges and a second by Councilmember Pryor to approve the agenda. Could I have roll call, please?
Vice Chair Pryor?
Aye.
Councilmember Hodges?
Aye.
Chair Edson?
Aye. Thank you. And we do have public comments tonight. Cinda Rader. Get somebody to help you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cinda Rader, and I live at 212 Northwest Spruce Street. Tonight, I want to talk to you about the ADUs. And so in the past, the CEDC has been very vocal and visionary in trying to discover ways to get more, I'm going to use the word affordable tonight for a reason, affordable housing and attainable housing into Lee Summit. And I think ADUs are a very good option for that, and here's why. And a lot of these things you're already going to know, but I'm going to bring them up anyway. First of all, in the case of an ADU, you already have a lot. There's no land acquisition, so the lot is already there, so you don't have the cost of that. You can have some infrastructure and utilities on that lot, so connecting to that can be cost effective. These units are small and compact, so it costs a lot less to build these types of homes. And then the biggest thing, and I want to bring up, is we all know this, but there's a lot of lifestyle changes that are happening in our country and in our city. And one of them, as you know, is we have two big, huge populations of people. We have our boomers and we have our millennials. And each one of those generations have different and unique needs for housing. Let's take the seniors, for instance. The seniors many of them want to downsize, but many of them maybe need to go into assisted living and they can't afford it, or they can't afford a patio villa. They're expensive. They may need to and want to be closer to family members, and an ADU can provide that opportunity for them if there's a space for that to happen. The other thing to remember about that is that on the flip side, for the millennials, if a senior is selling their home, it gives the opportunity for an entry-level buyer, a millennial, for instance, to buy that home. So right now, the reason that we're in such a crisis with housing is because there's a logjam. The seniors aren't putting their homes on the market. The interest rate is high. And so these people that need to buy entry-level homes don't have them to buy. So I know we're going to have a discussion about it tonight, and I'm really excited. I think that we need to be ahead of the game with this. We need to get our regulations, our policies, and our ordinances in place. And I think that Lee Summit is a very progressive city. And as part of that progression, we need to be ready to help these people when they come to us that are looking for these types of homes to be able to put in their backyards or on top of garages, whatever we decide that is, that we have a plan in place. And so that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we're moving on to the first order of business, which is the approval of the July 12th action letter. Do I have a motion?
Chair,
Councilmember Hodges.
I move for the approval of the July 12th, 2023 Community and Economic Development Action Letter.
Second. I have a motion by Councilmember Hodges and a second by Councilmember Pryor to approve the action letter. Could I have roll call, please?
Councilmember Hodges?
Aye.
Councilmember Felker?
Aye.
Chair Edson?
Aye.
Vice Chair Pryor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now on to the first order of business, which is TMP-2754, an ordinance approving the bylaws for the Lee Summit Visitors Bureau DBA Visit Lee Summit, a Missouri nonprofit 501c6 corporation in Lee Summit, Missouri. I understand the consultant's on Zoom. All right, thank you.
Crystal Cleaver, Assistant City Manager. I can't see it. There he is. All right. Now, committee, I know that you're familiar with John Wisenand, but I wanted to introduce him again for those that may not. He works for North Star Industries and has a decades-long career in tourism management. Hope he doesn't mind me saying the number there. And is recently retired from his position in Tennessee full-time, and now he's full-time consulting in the tourism industry. So we're so happy to have him and that he's able to continue on with us. You'll remember he presented last August the DMO feasibility and organizational study to the council, and he's since stayed on working with us to do the first step and moving forward with our DMO, which is establishing our bylaws. We need those bylaws in order to file for our 501c6 status and, of course, start the DMO itself, the part that's interesting, the paperwork. So he's just going to do a brief overview of how we got here. I know you guys are aware, but for the audience that may be new, and go over kind of the key elements of the bylaws, and then we'll be available for questions.
All right, thank you. And before we start, sir, I'd ask that somebody turn up that microphone.
Sorry, it's my voice. I'm not quite tall enough. I have to lean forward. And
all right, maybe that microphone. All right, thank you, Crystal. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Oh, great. Excellent. Well, thank you. Well, it's very good to see all of you again. Hello from a very rainy day in Nashville. As Crystal expressed just a moment ago, or explained a moment ago, North Star did present the recommendations to the City Council about forming a DMO, and the City Council approved those. And then we have since been contracted to help actually move the process now from concept to actually forming the DMO for Lee Summit. Our first step, as Crystal mentioned, was we needed to establish the bylaws for the 501c6 agency. That's the starting point for us to even be able to then begin the system of pulling together the board of directors, establishing the strategic tourism plan, moving forward with space, hiring an executive director, all of those types of things. So we began the process of developing those bylaws, which we're offering tonight for your consideration and eventual adoption, we hope, by the full City Council. Our goals in putting these together were several. One, we wanted to base them on best practices and for nonprofit DMOs. We wanted them to be specifically tailored to meet the unique needs and requirements of that will provide the best results for Lee Summit. It followed the guidelines that were earlier adopted by the City Council, and we had to make sure, obviously, that it met all legal requirements for the state of Missouri and Lee Summit ordinances. Crystal put together a great bylaws committee that we worked with. Teresa Evans, Donnie Rogers, Matt Baird. Crystal served on that, and I served on that. We began by collecting a whole bunch of DMO bylaws. Crystal collected several from DMOs in the region that she was familiar with. I did the same thing with DMOs that I've worked with across the country. From those many different bylaws, I developed a draft, a framework for us to use for the committee to discuss and move forward. Our committee met, we reviewed the bylaws, we made several changes in the process that I think made them even better, more uniquely suited to meet Lee Summit. All of our committee members, who I think several are there tonight and are ready to speak into this as they may want to develop a really good solid base of bylaws. That draft was then sent by Crystal to the city attorney for review and approval, which we received, and so we come back now to you guys to offer these for your consideration, for discussion. I don't know if any of the committee members, again, I can't see the audience, so I don't know who's actually there. If there are any of the committee members who want to speak to you regarding these bylaws as well. So, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back over to you for that.
Thank you, sir. I think I'm going to start with some beginning comments. And
yes, ma'am.
As you know, and as staff knows, this was supposed to be on last night's council agenda, and City Council was surprised because we hadn't heard anything about these bylaws being written. So I think there's a lot of frustration among some of the council members that this process was going on and none of us were included on it. So there's some frustration with that. So I'll start there. I'll just start with some questions. I don't know, sir, if you want to answer these, or Crystal, if you want to stand up. My first question is, tell me, what makes a 501c6 different? Why that nonprofit? I don't know.
Yes, ma'am. A 501c6 is the standard in the industry for DMOs, and a 501c6 is a not-for-profit as opposed to a nonprofit. A nonprofit basically is designed for charitable or benevolent type of activities. Contributions to a 501c3 are tax deductible for that reason, and so they have to have a very specific framework that is not designed to, quote, make money. Now, a 501c6 is a not-for-profit, which means that they're not tax exempt, for example, but they can make funding that is then poured back into the agency. It can't be used for profit as such. That's why it's called a not-for-profit. I'm sorry, I had some wrist surgery. I was trying to hide that, but the 501c6 allows the agency to actually operate a little more in a business model and differentiates it from a charitable institution, if that makes sense. It is the standard in the industry.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted that to be clear
Yes,
for
ma'am.
everybody. And
Yes, ma'am.
Committee members, I'm going to go through the bylaws with some of the questions I noted. If you all want to follow up at any point in time where I'm at, please do so, and then I'll come back around to you all, okay? All right. Going down, I see that the board of directors is appointed by the mayor. And there are descriptions about who those should be. That's a large board. It is. It's a large board, but I'm going back to, there's no council representation on here. Crystal's coming.
Well, yes, ma'am. Actually, okay, good. I'll let Crystal handle that because I believe our intent.
So the board.
Our intent.
Oh, go ahead, John.
Yes. I was going to say our intent definitely is to have council members on this board. Absolutely.
So you'll remember the study recommended the board composition, and the board composition didn't include a council as a voting board member, but as an ex officio member, like a council liaison, because this is supposed to be an independent board from the city. And if the council is a voting board member, when we come before you to ask for funding or other things, that makes it less independent. Now, assuming we come to ask for funding and the council grants it, we won't be fully independent. We will be a component unit of the city for a while because it would be the primary funding source, so we'd still have audit requirements. But that's also why the bylaws have a little bit of extra council control than what was recommended by the study. So the council must approve these bylaws. They have to approve any changes to the bylaws, and you have to approve and consent to the board member appointments. So there's not a whole lot of primary governance changes they could make without the council's consent, but they can't operate independently of the council.
Okay. Well,
as was recommended by the study.
Well, and I mean, past history has shown us that when we get in bed with our organizations where we don't have a lot of control, then we're just writing checks.
Well, we appoint the majority, I should say we do appoint all the board members, but a majority of the board members are nominated by the mayor and by the city manager.
Yeah. Well, and I also...
And also, just, I'm sorry to interrupt, you can also remove, the council can remove any board member at any time because you want to. That's a plain language way to put it, with or without a recommendation from the board.
Okay, so why do we have no council members, but we have 3 staff members?
So the 3 staff members will likely be an ACM, maybe our finance director, or maybe someone from the Parks Department, all people that have participated or were core components of the tourism program in the past. You'll remember in the study, the makeup of the board is all the folks, what do you call them, member industries, because this is a business trade association or a member association that are influenced, or sectors are influenced by the work of the DMO, and then all the partners that help execute tourism functions in the past and continue to do so as part of their primary business.
Questions yet? Don't have any questions? Waiting for Andrew because he may be tired from last night.
I'm not prepared with some of the questions I think I have. It might end up being redlined at some.
Okay. Okay. Well, you've recovered. That's okay. Okay. So, well, what about?
And Madam Chair,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Our intent was in no way to exclude City Council from involvement in and authority over this group. The primary kickback was having to do with budget items when there might be some conflict of interest. If a member was sitting on the board and was also a member of the council, there could be some issues there. I believe that was the primary reason to not specifically say a city council member sits on this board. But our intent, and maybe it needs to be refined and better explained within the bylaws. The city is meant to be highly involved in this process. While you have an independent board, we fully recognize the funding organization for the DMO's program of work comes from the city, and the city has every right to expect accountability, to expect input into what that program is. So it was not our intent at all to exclude city council members.
No, I understand that. I think you have a council that has worked really hard to push this forward and wants to see this, but they also want to make sure it doesn't fail, and they want to be involved in that.
Absolutely.
So. Yes, ma'am.
Chairman, can
absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Can I add one more thing? I was trying earlier to explain it as plainly as I am because I'm not allowed to practice law. So I just checked with David to make sure I'm saying this correctly. So council is listed as an ex officio member, but the reason you're not a voting member on the board is because you really can't act on behalf of the council without council deciding as a whole. So that means every time you had to vote for the board, council would literally have to hear it first, give you direction, and vote. And so it just...
Okay, I can't find anywhere where we're listed as an ex officio. Can you point that out? Because I was looking for that.
You know what? You're right, because it was going to come with the PSA, and you can't see those notes because they're not in your packet.
But shouldn't it be in the bylaws?
I can add it to the bylaws. That's an easy change.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go in talking about that. Let's talk about the executive board, because shouldn't the mayor, either the mayor or the mayor pro tem or their designee, or the city manager, assistant city manager, or their designee, shouldn't they be, I think they ought to be voting members on the executive board. Can they not be voting members?
So the executive committee, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
the executive committee is just the officers. So anyone who's a board member could be an officer. But it's up to the board to appoint those officers, if that makes sense. So it's the executive committee is the chairman, the secretary, treasurer, the immediate past chairman.
But with the EDC, aren't the mayor and city manager on the executive board?
They attend the executive committee. They are ex officio, I believe, but Ms. Evans would have to answer that.
I think they're voting members. Which one of you back there knows?
But the mayor and city manager are members of their board as ex officios. On here, it's just whoever is appointed.
I'm going to let Matt Baird explain that.
Could you please introduce yourself?
Matt Baird, President Lee Summit Chamber.
Thank you.
So EDC is a C4 organization, not a C6 or a C3. So, and yes, EDC, the mayor and the city manager, they are voting members on the executive committee. But again, I think that's that. And John, you can jump in here on the whole C4, C6 explanation, but it's that's the trigger. So on the chamber board, which we are a C6 organization, they are an ex officio. They do not vote. They're not a voting member on a C3 organization, but with EDC and their C4, they are voting members. Yep. But I think that's the trigger is that C status.
I look like I believe you.
And
That was good, Matt.
Also, the executive,
I believe you.
the executive committee for this board is just an advisory committee. They don't take any action. They can't act without a full vote of the board. So,
Well, with the exception, Crystal, I think of personnel issues. Let me double check when we get there. I think the executive committee acts as the personnel committee and may, or they may have to come back to recommendations to the full board. I'm not sure. And I just, Matt tricked me on that one. The 501c4, I had to look it up real quickly. And those are typically civic leagues or organizations operated exclusively for the promotion of social welfare. So I wasn't familiar with what a C4 was myself.
Mr. Felker.
Well, the bylaws say the executive director is hired by the board, not by the executive.
Okay. All right. Okay.
and the personnel committee takes all personnel actions required around the executive director or any other staff the board hires directly, but they must make recommendations where any action can be executed. That includes pay raises, discipline,
Correct.
whatever.
Okay.
Correct.
So I guess my question is, does the mayor or council have any influence over who is hired as the executive director?
Well, we haven't got to that process yet. One of the things the consultant's going to help the board with is going through and setting up that process. So writing the job description, writing up how we're going to go about recruitment and how we're going to go about selection. So I don't know if the council wants to have an advisory role and participate in those interviews, make that recommendation, but that's not something that's in the bylaws. Because if the council has a direct vote on the personnel, that would make us a closer component of the city and not an independent organization for future funding purposes.
Okay.
But I fully guess that since this is a collaborative effort from community, remember this is going to be a community organization, that we're going to have lots of input into how the director is selected. But that's one of the next steps the consultant's going to help the board. Once the board's appointed, the board is going to work with John to develop a strategic plan, a tourism plan, and then an operational plan. So how we're going to move forward with getting the executive director, what our space needs might be in the future, and a timeline for that. So,
well, I mean, from my perspective, and Councilmember Felker, you can straighten me out if you would like to. It would be fine. But I look at these bylaws and I'm like, I don't see mayor, I don't see mayor pro tem, I don't see city council in here anywhere.
Well,
And
sure
we're the ones who, we wanted the organization, we wanted to start it, but we did not want to go, here, we're going to give you a bunch of money, you all go do whatever. We need to make sure, and I know you're talking about we approved the budget and the tax dollars and everything. I just have a lot more questions about this.
Well, and also the council might be able to request additional controls through your funding agreement. So this is just the government's agreement for the organization. So the organization is set up as an independent organization. Assuming right now there is no other funding source that I can think of off the top of my head to start for seed money or capacity building money, it's likely going to be the city. You can put any kind of stipulations you want in those funding agreements, whether it's a PSA, an MOU, whatever it is that we move forward with. So also, you do have influence because you're choosing who gets appointed. It's a community organization. I think everyone's committed to doing this together in a way that I think everyone wants us to be a success.
Well, and I don't understand the additional at-large representatives.
You talk about the two that can be from any industry?
Yeah.
So, we're going through a tourism plan with John. There are all types of industries that are influenced by the work of a DMO and by tourism. The medical industry may be a large tourism component for us. I know that's a weird thing to think about, but lots of people travel in here from areas around us for medical care at some of our really great hospitals and other institutions. So perhaps it may be someone from that based on what the tourism plan says we have large industries. It could be a restaurant or retailer. It could be another hotel interest. Maybe there's going to be a future or maybe it's someone temporarily for the next couple of years from the World Cup Committee or a different sports interest. It gives flexibility as things grow and change so that you don't have just one narrow definition of that industry, because it's going to change for us over the decades as it has. So.
Can we house this organization in City Hall?
We can just start. That's part of the plan they're going to go through is figure out what their housing and staffing needs look like.
Okay. All right. Are there any questions from committee?
I like to tell Matt I'm going to put him in his building, but that's just to mess with him.
Council.
And Madam Chair, the long-term plan, I think, and this will come out of the tourism strategic plan, which we'll develop in concert with the board once it's put together, is to eventually, hopefully, have a visitor center for Lee Summit, a public-facing facility to serve as a visitor center. We would hope it's when that is discovered that there's also space within that for the offices of the DMO. So that could even be in the city hall.
Yeah.
But that's part of that is our thinking for the future is to have a combination visitor center / office space for the DMO.
And can I just say I love that you call me Madam Chair. I'm so excited by that. What else was I going to ask? I'm waiting for Councilmember Felker to wake up. He had a rough night last night. Has going through funding, has anything gone through finance and budget regarding this?
No funding has been requested to date. So we actually have to go through a process to incorporate, appoint the board. The board will do this tourism plan, do their strategic plan, and then that from those things will come a funding request. We wouldn't want to come before council now and just ask for, a dollar amount out of the air. The board needs to come to you and show you why they need the money they need and how they're going to use it. I mean, that's what you expect, and then how they're going to track that performance. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you all don't have any questions, I guess we can move on to the ordinance.
Madam Chair, can I point out one error that I think Councilmember Felker will appreciate?
Oh, sure.
In the ordinance in Exhibit A, you'll notice where the board members are outlined. It says 6 members nominated by the mayor and a bunch of bullet points. Those are not all supposed to be bullet points. You'll also notice that some commas turned yellow and a number turned green. We have some kind of formatting process when we go from Word to not PowerPoint, to PDF, that it just does strange things. And I apologize, I didn't catch that till this morning. So we'll get those Scrivener's things cleaned up, especially the yellow commas. Those are, never seen that happen before.
Well, and I just want to point out.
I was just going to say,
yeah. Go ahead.
This is Zoom 101, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think if I understand correctly, it's the first 6 positions that you see bulleted there that are actually appointed by or nominated by the mayor. So
yeah, I
believe that's correct.
That's what I was going to point out too. So I appreciate that.
Yes. Okay.
Sorry, I made the math look weird, but the math is right. The just bullet points are wrong.
Okay. And speaking of Zoom, all their employees have to get back to work. So I thought that was interesting. Okay. Councilmember Felker.
The real basic question. Why did we decide, I'm not saying it's wrong or bad, but the name? Lee Summit Visitors Bureau, and then Visit Lee Summit. I'm just curious, I was kind of just doing a quick little look at other, tourism is often used in the name, and we call this a destination marketing organization. Why not consider something like Destination Lee Summit? Anyway, just curious what kind of conversations were had about what we're going to call this.
So the Lee Summit Visitors Bureau, the kind of legal name, was just because people tend to be familiar with what a Visitors Bureau is, because DMO is still kind of a new and emerging term, especially in the Midwest. Visit LS, that was really just a working name, but I think it came to the committee because a lot of the region is familiar with Visit KC, and Visit KC will remain our state designated DMO. So there are DMOs designated by the state that have to serve a region larger than just one city, and they receive state funding to help market other things inside that entire region. So since the name sort of played off that, it was something people were familiar with, the name can be changed.
Yep. I don't know.
This was for familiarity and easy. And we have a lot of things that are like, see Lee Summit, shop Lee Summit, visit Lee Summit, just seem to.
I'm not wedded to anything.
I wished it was a cooler story than that, but it's not.
The word bureau, I know.
Well, and I'm sorry, Councilman, I was going to say we can actually remove that DBA. I don't know if that's necessary for the bylaws, and that could be a marketing decision made later on. What they choose to call themselves. We specifically did not call it a Convention and Visitors Bureau because at this point That's a term that's very much going away in the industry. And at this point, you don't have convention facilities as such that your bureau is going to be involved with going out and seeking 10,000 person conventions right now. But anybody who comes, whether they're coming for a meeting or leisure or business, is a visitor. So that's why we opted to call it a visitor center. But obviously, we can take out the DBA Visit Lease Summit. So
I'm still thinking about the name, but I just wanted curious to know what process went into coming up with the name, and if there were any other candidate names that had been floated, and that because this is what's going to be. The DBA is what's going to be out there. So,
like you said, we can always remove the DBA. It was a working name, and let that be a part of the DMO's strategic process, which is to come up with a name.
Maybe the Andrew Felker Memorial Convention and Visitors Bureau or something.
I can take a picture and provide it. So I would appreciate whenever you're done cleaning up, if you could send out a Word version, I'd love to see it. I'll probably do something to it, but. My thoughts, there's not a lot that concerns me from a governance standpoint. I think the fact that if we as a city decide to provide funding for this, obviously that's where we have influence on higher as a city, as a council.
That's correct.
I do appreciate that there was some language in here, it looks like we probably pulled some of the language about absences that we did some of our cultural, our two commissions.
Yes.
If you're absent, you better have a good reason, and that.
Yes, Councilor Chairman, is it okay if I?
Yeah.
Our hope, Councilman. I'm sorry. Our hope, Councilman, is to have active board members and not just people who would like to have their name on a list of board of directors for tourism. So.
Yep,
but to be active and involved.
Right, because I mean that's, I think there's a temptation on the part of some who get involved with an organization to, be glad they've got the title, but then they don't contribute, and so certainly not showing up is a way of not contributing, and so I think having a mechanism for saying goodbye, see you later, I think is helpful. I appreciate that we've got the council does have an influence on the board membership in the sense of removing some motion here on the council during a city council meeting to visit this issue. I see how that might be done if that.
I'm going to speak for the committee, so if I say anything wrong, if they pop up, y'all let me know. But it was really important. We had a lot of leadership from John and his expertise in the industry, but the committee took a lot from not just from council, but when we did the study, all the input from the industry and the community. And this is something that's such an important part and such a, it already is an economic impact to the community, but could be one even greater when we put these resources here like the council has asked us to look at. And I think you're really wise to see that as another way to diversify the business here. And it needs to be a success. So those attendance requirements were to help kind of give the message that this though the board only has to meet 4 times a year, I'm guessing those 4 times a year meetings aren't going to happen for several years. Board is going to have to meet quite often. This is going to be an active, growing, fast-paced kind of startup of an organization that's going to require board members that have that commitment. Side note, when we do begin to put out information through our system for people to apply, that information is going to be in there, as well as the first 4 or 5 meetings that we're going to have them attend, so that when you apply, you're expected to attend on these dates, so that everyone comes with that in mind and understands kind of that this is a little bit heavier of a commitment than maybe some of our other community groups, because it is a startup and it takes a lot at first. As you guys all know, several of you have run your own businesses, and the beginning is a steep climb. So, and then also for the removal of the board, the committee thought that was really important because this is so important to the community. We can't mess this up. So we wanted to make sure we had every way out if there was someone who was not following the direction of the council and the community and where this board was trying to go, or wasn't participating, or gets in some kind of trouble that puts the board at risk. We wanted to make sure we could preserve and protect as much as we could. So,
well, and I think
I don't think that'll ever happen here, but it was just a case.
Well, I mean, past experiences has shown us that we create these organizations, and that's why several of us are really concerned about council input, because it has not worked out well in the past. And I don't want that to happen with this. And I want every protection we can get that whatever council we have and whoever is mayor has a lot of influence and control over this organization. So when I read through the bylaws and went, well, where are we at? We're just not included anywhere in here.
That's another reason the city manager has those staff appointments, is you hold him accountable and he's going to hold that staff accountable for doing everything we can to make sure it's successful. Now, I know we're not talking about funding agreements tonight, but I will assure you, John, from his experience sharing with committee and just us as staff working with you and know what your expectations are, regular reporting is going to be a part of that funding request.
So when you said the budget and finance hasn't done anything, so these won't be married because this is coming to council in a couple of weeks.
That's right, because the hope is someday in the future, we won't have to fully rely on the city to fund some of our tourism activities, whatever that looks like. Maybe we're fortunate that we built such a strong model and have such an involved community that we can actually become our own recognized DMO and serve the greater Lee Summit area, and then we would get state funding. Now, I hope no one from Visit Casey is listening. I'm not coming for you. I just want to partner with you. So
We can come for him.
don't say that too loud. I still need money from
And
them.
also, being part of a 501c6, as a 501c6 organization, a DMO can apply for all kinds of grants outside of just the state grants, which I know is an important funding, but there are other tour-related grants out there, both from the federal and state levels and organizational levels that a 501c6 can use for their funding. They can sell advertising. They can monetize the website. They can operate special events. I don't recommend it, but they can operate special events as fundraising too, as a 501c6.
Okay.
Chair, could I provide David over here one additional point of information that may be helpful on that question? I know a primary distinction between 50c6 and other types of tax-exempt organizations is that a C6 can engage in lobbying efforts. That's a critical distinction between.
I'm sorry, say that again, David.
It can engage
yes.
It can engage in lobbying efforts.
Correct. That's valid point. Very valid point.
All right. Yeah.
I do have one. Just an observation. So this is for the committee more so, I think, to bring to attention, I'm sure the work that was done in bringing this to us. So Article 7 says that any amendments, so the bylaws are the governing document for just how they operate as a board, right? How they interact with us, I think, is going to be through the PSA eventually, that, if we end up going forward with that. And the other ways we interact via the bylaws are some of the things we've already brought to our attention. One of them is that we haven't talked about yet is in Article 7 at the end, where it says if these bylaws are amended, they have to be in compliance with what the laws of the state as well as city code. So which passed an ordinance that references an agreement.
Correct.
There's our connection. So those agreements, they can't go back and change the bylaws in some way that would violate whatever agreement we may enter in.
Right.
So, and then the other is that it says the board of directors can dissolve it, but they still have to come back to us, I guess, to maybe make that actual. And we hope that doesn't ever happen, because we want this to be
correct.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Councilmember Felker is absolutely correct. And in less polite language, it's so the board can't go rogue. I don't anticipate that would ever happen. I hope we build a board that is committed to what we're trying to do for the community, what's in our strategic plan. But again, we wanted to put all the safety stops in there. And in fact, we did a little exercise with John. We listed everything that we knew ever gone wrong with any board we've been a part of and boards we're currently a part of, and tried to put in for those and just get those protections in, which is also a little fun and great horror stories. I hope we never have any of those actually happen, but
you should have invited me to that one.
Also, he mentioned the dissolution Yes, the board could dissolve any time. Hope that doesn't happen unless we have some generous benefactor that just decides to fund tourism out of his longstanding Mega Millions winnings for the rest of eternity. I don't know, but the reason it has to come back to the city is for several reasons. One, you're the creating agency, but also the initial seed funding is likely to come from the city. So any assets or work products or anything they have would, for most business purposes, be a product of the cities. So we would need to return that to you. So if we go bankrupt or anything happens, the city is the primary. You get all the assets that we own. So if there's a building in the future, it comes to the city, those kind of things. So.
Okay. Any other last comments, questions? No. All right. Well, are you ready for a motion? Thank you, sir, for coming.
Chairman, I'm so sorry. I know
Yes,
you're about to
ma'am.
call a vote, but did you want me to share the timeline, what we're looking at moving forward? Would that be okay before you vote?
Yeah.
So we plan to have this before your committee tonight. We hope that if a positive recommendation, council will approve next week. The day after council approves, or by that Friday, hopefully the day after, we hope to put out the call for applications through the system that we used last time for our boards and commissions. Those will be due around the 25th of August to the mayor. Also, the nominations from the other partner, tourism partners will be due at that same time. The mayor will then make those recommendations or appointments before the council on the first meeting in September. So assuming you get a positive, the committee will start meeting the following week is the goal. The reason we're on such a timeline is we're trying to get all of this put together so we have funding requests, everything ready to come back to you January, ready to go for the beginning of the year. Also, that's when our contract ends with John, so we'd like to do it before that contract ends, and I have to pay him whether we're done or not. So now that doesn't mean our future work has to end with John. We're always welcome to hire him back for future things, but we have appreciated his leadership and his ridiculously immense knowledge of tourism. I tried to get him to move here, but he really likes his grandchildren, so.
Move them.
Go figure.
I know, man.
Fair.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty intense timeline.
It's a very
fast.
intense timeline.
So-
The mayor has said he can do it by then, and so we're all going to hold him to it. So.
Okay.
And once that September date hits, we'll hit the ground running with the board of directors and putting together the tourism plan, the strategic plan, and the tourism plan, and begin that process. Some of the issues, for example, I'll be working with the board to develop, for example, a job description for the executive director. I won't and provide sources to advertise for that position. I may not be there when that actually happens, but I will have laid that groundwork for the board of directors. And as I've told Crystal, she's got my phone number. All she has to do is call me. And whether I'm contracted or not, I'm going to make sure Lee Summit's DMO is up and running. I've fallen in love with the community, and I want to make sure this works too. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Now, I do. Yes, ma'am. May I ask one question real quickly, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
With some of the things that you've talked about this evening about, do we need to address perhaps the ex officio role of council members and the mayor or council participation in the hiring of the executive director? Do you want those changes and actually the deletion of the DBA Visit Lee Summit? Do you want those included in the bylaws before they go to council? Do you want those adjustments to the bylaws?
Well, they would have to be before we go to council. Hang on, Crystal's going to tell us something wise. Yes, Crystal.
Okay, all right.
I appreciate your confidence in me. No, I was just going to say it would be helpful if the committee would propose those amendments in concept. We can fix the language before it goes to council next week. I have kept a list of them. So it's to remove the DBA, to add the council as ex officio, and of course, fix all the Scrivener's errors. You don't have to make a motion for that.
Council member Felker.
So, fix Scrivener's errors.
Yeah,
Sure.
you don't have to make a motion for that, but.
Move the DBA because we don't know yet. The other was.
List a council liaison as an ex officio.
Got it.
And that will go through your regular council liaison appointment process with Mayor Pro Tem.
I can make a motion.
I would appreciate that.
Madam Chair, I'd move that we amend Exhibit A for TMP-2754, the ordinance approving the bylaws for Lee Summit Visitors Bureau today to to direct staff to amend the bylaws to incorporate the inclusion of a council member as a ex officio member of the board. I think that's good. As well as removing the fictitious name Visit Lee Summit from the name on the sheet.
Second.
Julie, did you get that motion?
Oh, it'll be recorded.
Oh, okay. Okay. I appreciate the motion. Does the ex officio then get appointed by the mayor or the mayor pro tem?
I believe when we discussed it with Brian, and David can let us know if we're wrong, we'll list it as a council liaison will be an ex officio, and you have a council liaison appointment process. So
okay.
And we
That's what I
won't
want.
put a specific of how it happens because that may change in the future, how the council could change the rules, how they do that. So I don't want to bind you with another agreement. So
All right. I have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? No. Could I have a roll call, please, Julie?
Councilmember Felker,
Aye.
Chair Edson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Pryor,
Aye.
Councilmember Hodges.
Aye.
And all right, we have the motion. Now could I have a motion on the ordinance as amended? The ordinance isn't amended.
Chair.
Yes.
I move that we recommend for approval PMP 2754, an ordinance approving the bylaws for Lee Summit Visitors Bureau, DBA Visit Lee Summit, a Missouri nonprofit 501c6 corporation in Lee Summit, Missouri, as amended with a recommendation for approval to City Council.
second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Felker and a second by Councilmember Pryor. Any discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Chair Edson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Pryor,
Aye.
Councilmember Hodges,
Aye.
Councilmember Felker.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, sir. We'll see you later.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you. All right, and we will move on to, before we move on, I just want to say, Mr. Baird, I'm sorry I gave you a hard time. To TMP 2735, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a memorandum of understanding by and between the city of Lee Summit, Missouri and the Lee Summit R7 School District for the Impact Program.
Good afternoon, Major Nicole Walters with the Police Department. Can you hear me good enough? I think I'm a little bit taller than Crystal. So what you have in front of you is that MOU between the city and the school district. Earlier, the city received a grant from the Jackson County Combat Drug Commission to assist the city in defraying certain costs with our newly developed impact program. We will exclusively be teaching that and going away from the DARE program. That impact program is also an anti-drug and stress management curriculum built around our youth's current and ever-changing culture. Students will learn to make smart and healthy decisions using the core values of integrity, responsibility, respect, and prevention. The impact program benefits district students in the 5th and 7th grade. They have 10 lessons, and we also will teach lessons with 2nd and 4th graders just at a reduced amount. They will learn to resist the use of tobacco, alcohol, marijuana, and vaping, and will learn skills to manage stress, resist peer pressure, and control emotions during conflicts. Through the combat grant and city funding, our officers will continue to be in the schools and educate those students. So I'll take any questions if you have them.
Questions? Yes, Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you. So I was wondering if, like, the whole marijuana thing, now that it's legal in Missouri, I didn't know if that was still going to be a thing that you guys.
Well, it's not legal for students. So
yeah.
Yes. We will still be teaching students about the dangers of using marijuana.
You guys talk about fentanyl at all?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Other questions?
So DARE program still exists.
Yes, ma'am. The DARE program still exists. This program came about during COVID. We ran into some issues with DARE and some different ways that we could get our program to students who were at home and not in school. So we decided to develop our own program. And the DARE program, based on some of the surveys that we did, we found that we were missing some things that we needed to address within our community. So that's why we've developed our own and moved away from it.
And do you have a mascot?
We do. We have a brand new mascot. His name is Copper. He's a German Shepherd. With the help of creative services, we do. And I apologize that I do not have a Copper here to show you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Could I have a motion for the ordinance, please?
Chair,
Councilmember Hodges.
I move to recommend to City Council approval of agenda item TMP-2735, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a memorandum of understanding by and between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and the Lee Summit R7 School District for the Impact Program.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Hodges and a second from Councilmember Pryor. Questions, discussion, Councilmember Felker.
I will not be participating in this vote. I'll be recusing for a conflict of interest. School district.
Okay.
I don't want kids on drugs. That's for sure.
All right, could I have a roll call, please?
Vice Chair Pryor,
Aye.
Councilmember Hodges,
Aye.
Chair Edson.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, we've been here an hour. Would you all like a 5-minute break? Let's take a 5-minute break. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Like 5:58. Okay? Thank you. on accessory dwelling units, and Amy Nassif. Nassif?
Both, either one.
Okay. All right.
Amy Nassif, thank you very much. Happy to be here tonight talking about accessory dwelling units. Let me see here. So again, here this evening for some of our goals and strategies from our Ignite comprehensive plan for housing choice and creating that housing diversity for our housing stock. And just to recap too, the type of ADUs that we're talking about, this is just an illustration that we're talking about anything that could be attached or detached or say like a garage conversion. So any type of accessory dwelling unit. Oh, I went the wrong way, sorry. So from our last meeting in June, there were 4 questions that came out of the CEDC committee that they asked staff to look at. That was a map and some information downtown with what parcel information sizes that we could obtain, some additional research and any recommendations we may have for downtown areas or districts, and do other cities have specific regulations just for their downtown areas when it comes to ADUs. Also wanted to see how we compare with other cities in the area and some site layout examples. One for like an average size for a downtown lot, and then one was selected for a half-acre lot was the direction. So I'll just go through all those for you. So the first was our downtown map and downtown information. And so again, this is just the area designated as our old downtown Lee Summit. The average lot size, the average residential lot size in downtown is about 14,800 square feet. Now, the only little difference is that for, say, an accessory dwelling unit that we're talking about, the average lot size for that in downtown is going to be about 11,000 square foot. The difference being for an ADU, you would need to have residential zoning and have a single family residence on your lot. So when you extrapolated those out of our GIS system, that made an average lot size a little bit smaller of 11,000 square feet. And I'll get more into then what our recommendations are and what we found for downtown districts for ADUs as we go along.
Is 14,000, that's less than half, right?
Yes, half would be around 22,000 square feet.
Okay,
half
so
acre would be
a little over a third?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So existing regulations. So what I wanted to show here was what our existing regulations were. So again, so we're not coming before you to add ADUs into our code. We already do allow ADUs without much restriction. So the very top line is what we currently have, or the lack of what we have in terms of regulations and restrictions. And then the surrounding areas that we chose for proximity to us and similarity in either size or demographics, or they also had ADUs in their code, was Blue Springs, Overland Park, and Olathe. And then the very bottom is what's being proposed then before you. So happy to walk through this a little bit more if you like. As you can kind of see, this isn't all the regulations from each of those zoning codes or anything, or even all of ours. But wanted to point out kind of the main areas and the main talking points of things we've discussed, such as minimum lot size, the number of ADUs allowed on a lot, architecture requirements, maximum height, maximum ADU size, things of that nature.
And I ask this every time we talk about ADUs. Could you remind me what TNZ zoning stands for?
I know. Transitional neighborhood zoning?
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's it. Okay.
My probation ends in like, what, 30 days, so I'm not sure yet. So yeah.
That was it. That was the test. I didn't even
feel
know.
much better now. That was one that I didn't prep for. So yeah, it's a TNZ. So just a real highlight overview for you too. As you can see, just our current regulations, we lack in a lot of areas. There's no maximum number to how many ADUs you can have on a lot right now. We do not have any architecture regulations at all. We also interchange a lot of terms in our code right now. We use the term lofts, we use the term lofts above garages, we use guest houses, accessory residential units, so super confusing. And then we also don't have size requirements either. So the proposal at the very bottom, which is kind of in more gray font, it does line up more and it's more consistent with what the general area is doing and what recommendations are for best practices.
Okay, and I appreciate this chart. This is great. Are there any questions from the committee? Oh, on the proposed?
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
You're not flipping from this yet, are you?
No, I'll do whatever you like.
Go ahead.
I was just thinking about since we did have something in place, it just didn't have a lot of guidelines. This isn't something that once we put these new guidelines in place, those people, nobody's going to be grandfathered, right? They're not going to be grandfathered into, because they were doing it before, they get to do it the old way or anything like that.
We don't have any pending permits in right now. There have been some ADUs built. There are some old structures, like even garages and sheds, especially in our downtown area, that don't meet today's setbacks or regulations. So if it is existing right now, it is grandfathered. But we, like I said, don't have any pending applications or anything at all.
So even with the way we did, and I guess we're not there yet. I might be jumping the gun, but with the rules on not doing short-term rentals, like even the residents in the ADU, they will have to follow whatever we set.
Yes.
Correct. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
So for instance, currently right now, we don't have a limit on the number of ADUs on a lot. All other cities do, and our proposed regs would. Right now, we don't have architecture requirements or regulations in any way. All of our neighboring cities do, and the proposed language would as well. Height's a big deal also, especially when you're talking about compatibility. I'm just kind of moving down the columns if that helps, because I see, okay. So the maximum height, for instance, we only have a height on guest houses. And we don't have a height restriction on lofts above garages or accessory dwelling units. So all other cities do, and they have it under one terminology or one name. And so our proposed regs would have a height restriction. ADU size is a huge, big deal. That's really how you make sure that massing and scale and even the architecture matches and does not change the character or negatively impact the neighbors or the neighboring community. We don't have a regulation in place right now, so someone could just build any size. All of our, again, neighboring cities do. Best practices recommend that, and our proposed language would include that as well.
Well, okay. So what defines an ADU? Because let's say my lot size is the right size, and I go out and I buy a shed. And then I fix up the shed and put one of my older kids in it. Is it still a shed or is it an ADU?
So, and I was going to ask you if do we like the kids? So,
they're grown.
Okay. So an accessory dwelling unit is a residential unit that will meet code standards in terms of having bedroom, utilities, restroom, kitchen facilities. That is accessory to a primary or principal single family residence on a lot.
Okay, so when you start hooking up utilities to it, it becomes an ADU.
It becomes an ADU.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And can you have, under current or proposed restrictions, can you have both an ADU and a shed?
Yes.
Two separate. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Oh, Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you. So I'm not seeing anything about the parking, but is there something stating the parking is off-street parking?
Yes, and that I was just trying to, again, just kind of pick and choose like the highlight areas. Parking we do have in the proposal.
Okay.
We have that you have to provide sufficient parking, and it can't take away from the parking necessary for the residence itself. We do not have that currently. The proposed language would, and again, that's something that the other municipalities have as well.
Does it specifically say off-street?
Yes.
It does. Okay.
Our proposed language does.
The proposed. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
How many spots? One?
One.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Felker, are you ready to go to the next slide? Are you okay?
Okay. You okay? Okay.
I know you all like my questions. I think it was valid.
Very good. So The next step was to provide some layouts, and Shannon McGuire did a fantastic job with these for us. So the first is a half-acre size layout example. It's the same lot, top and bottom, it's just different view perspectives. So the gray, or your single-family residence primary structures, and the green is showing what an ADU would look like. And so this example is about a half-acre lot, it's a little bit larger. So the building size, the home, we just took an average typical lot, is about 2,400 square feet. So under our proposed regulations, an ADU can only be no more than 50% of the size of a primary structure, or 1,000 feet, whichever is less. So this is 1,000 square feet in size. Under today's regs, again. So this is just, it gives that perspective. The reds are sheds, so to your question before, so just wanted to show a couple lots and see, like, already when you have detached structures out there, what it may look like or not look like.
And this is what we're looking at in terms of a layout. We're not talking about downtown. This would be more like not downtown.
Correct. We took out the street names and addresses to protect the innocent. So,
Trying to
but yes,
see if I recognize.
yeah. Yeah.
Put one in.
And this is not one that already exists. We just picked the lot and did it. Yeah. Yeah. And then this is a downtown example. So again, you have the gray are going to be existing residential lots that are actually out there now. Again, Shannon McGuire did a fantastic job for us finding those. And so those are actual, real what's out there. The blue is a detached garage that exists on property that we chose as an example. And then the ADU. And so this one being in downtown, the building size is about 1,400 square feet. So that ADU, when you scale it, it's about 700 square foot. And we didn't do attached ones because we thought it would be a better perspective, or you may answer your questions more if it was a detached ADU example. So then the last thing we looked at, which ties back into the downtown research, is that there was a lot of discussion and requests about what should we do with our downtown district. Our downtown area is so special to us. It has such a unique character and personality with the architecture and the existing residents that are out there now. And absolutely. Did a lot of research, and honestly, most cities do not have separate regulations for their downtown district, other than having language that says it should be compatible with their downtown area. One or two cities this was global, this wasn't just locally, looking at KC Metro, had some design regulations, but that was more on the very far west coast, California. But for the most part, everyone just says meet the character in the neighborhood, have the architecture be compatible, and then they really do, what they do is they work on the size. And a lot of cities do have a little bit of a smaller size for ADUs in their downtowns, just because the lot sizes are so different and unique in your downtown areas. And you have so many older buildings that may not meet today's setbacks. So one thing we were recommending then to help the questions and the concerns we have been hearing from the CEDC was that proposing to add this language into the draft by the arrow here that just says, it's 1,000 square foot or 50% of the principal structure's floor area, whichever is less, with the following exception, that if you are in downtown Lee Summit and your lot's less than 15,000 square foot in size, that your ADU will be more of what we call a junior ADU, and it won't exceed 500 square foot or 50% of the structure, whichever is less. And that just gives that little bit more protection, helps with the massing and scaling, and so forth to protect those lots. Yes.
Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you. Okay, so I know it doesn't exactly state like a minimum lot size, but with I'm trying to remember exactly what it is, 20 feet from the back, and then it has to be 6 feet back from the original structure from the house. what's the average lot size? So, and then what are the size? It says by district. Which one, are they about 8 feet on either side? I'm just trying to figure out like what, I don't want to see anyone cramming an ADU on a tiny little lot, because there are some that are tiny little lots, but
And
they wouldn't.
respectfully, they won't fit, because
That-
when you
that-
put in
okay.
the setbacks and the height, when you put in the setback requirements, the size requirements, and then you still do have an impervious area coverage of no more than like, I think, believe it's 60%.
Okay.
Those are really small lots. With the
Okay, and
proposed
that's what I just wanted to
language,
make sure.
the answer is probably going to be you either need to attach it, convert your garage, or you can't have one.
And then in the other cities, I know you did the comparison, which I really loved. I love all your knowledge that you have from other cities, especially on the Kansas side, because I feel like, even though it's a different state, those are a lot of our comparison cities. But I know with this, they'd no longer have to come before council. In the other cities, do they have to go before council, or is it worked in where it's all administrative and they don't go before
It's
council?
all administrative review done by staff.
And then my last question as of right now is, I didn't really see stormwater addressed. How would that be addressed with?
That's through our the impervious coverage requirements and maximum requirements that we have as well. And then also when the plans come in, they still have building permits and reviews that are done to ensure and make sure they're not having any off-site water or increasing the flow onto the neighbor's property, just like you would with any structure.
I know that's supposed to work, but
Yeah.
it doesn't always work.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
And
Thank you.
Okay.
While you're on
Yes. Let me show you, if you don't mind, I'll show you where we're at. So, from what I understood, which of course we can revisit tonight, is the districts themselves, we seem like we were okay with last time. And so this was the language that came out of CEDC the last few times was, so the location would be properties in the old downtown Lee Summit area, or properties that are half acre in size or larger that also have the Ag, RDR, RLL, R1, RP1 zoning. Or properties, any other properties, but approved through that PDP process. Yeah, so really what was from the last time was, are we comfortable with, do we want additional regulations in downtown? And that was the only thing that I remember hearing and had jotted down from, in terms of this, any language changes per se. So I can go back if you like. There was just a couple more slides. There we go. Was just some examples again of what, when you do like the recommendation of what's proposed that has the architectures required to be compatible with the primary, home and structure. You can see in the bottom, like far right, that is more in line and kind of compatible with that area. When you convert the garages, it still keeps that look as well. And then things like you have the setbacks and whatnot. So that was just a couple photos. None of these are local. And then an ADU rendering show too, like the compatibility that you can get with those regulations, for instance. So the draft language, just in a nutshell, kind of helps provide that clarity, includes the design requirements and the size restrictions we don't currently have, and then advances those goals too. And then just the process steps with your direction. If we have a good working draft that we can still be discussing and take that forward to public hearing, planning commission, just to continue getting input. And then it does circle back, of course, to city council for review, but I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, Councilmember Hodges has one.
I do, in regards to where it says on your spreadsheet thing, where it says if less than a half acre than PDP required, is that necessary to even have in there when we're setting the guidelines saying you have to have a half acre or above to even have one? But they were saying, but we might make an exception. I feel like that would get us into I don't know, when we're allowing exceptions, it just seems like it's a little bit of a slippery slope.
Oh, sure. So the reason that came up was from, I think, an April CEDC committee meeting, where we did realize and talk about, we do have some developments out there that have been approved for ADUs through a preliminary plan, development plan, and through their zoning. So then the discussion came up, well, those have already been approved, and we did that through the zoning process, and that was okay. So the previous CEDC committee wanted to have that language for flexibility in case there are other kind of mixed use or mixed housing rezoning developments that come in. But while they're coming through the zoning process, if they are a little bit smaller in size, it may be allowed just to be considered by the council.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Certainly.
I'm not a fan of it, but that doesn't mean we can't keep it in. I mean,
Councilmember Pryor, did you want to chime in on that? Because if it's downtown and less than half an acre, do you want a PDP?
Well, the half an acre doesn't apply to downtown, I don't believe, according to this. Yeah.
It's any other property. So the
Okay.
PDP is properties approved through a PDP if they want. Yeah.
But downtown.
And the downtown has the additional regulations right here under 4.
I did see the the short-term rental, and I like that. I know that you said it's kind of hard to enforce in downtown. I wish I don't know if there's anything we can add to make it easier to enforce that. Absolutely no short-term. I mean, they, in my opinion, just do not add anything great.
It is hard to enforce. It'll be hard to enforce, of course, but the first step is having it that it's not allowed.
Yeah.
Is a huge step. So
yeah. And I feel like you listened to us all well and put it all in here. I think you did a great job. To come before, I guess the half acre lot doesn't, somebody said the estimate's like $10,000, I guess, to come before council. Isn't that what I think an estimate someone gave me if you do that whole thing, the whole process? So I don't know that many people would want to even come before council that.
We'll be honest. I mean, these regulations will help provide clarity and to help promote housing choice. At the same token, though, with the additional regulations, there is going to be an additional cost. So, because we will have expectations and for that quality. Certainly when you come through rezoning and PDP, engineering drawings and architecture drawings would be required as part of that whole rezoning for that large development anyway, and that can be tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I think it's good. I have mixed feelings about the whole downtown thing. I kind of want to see it like the rest of the city and be the half acre like the rest of the city. But I also know that downtown is a little bit different, and a lot of people move down here and they don't necessarily mind the density. And there are a lot of big lots on the. When I was looking at that map, there's a lot of big lots as far as downtown goes. I don't know. I guess one of the biggest things that concerns me is the stormwater downtown. It's already terrible, and just to add to it. But I don't know that there's going to be a huge influx of people. I guess I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know.
That's okay.
I don't necessarily mind this. I think it's well thought out, and I think it looks pretty good to me.
And that reminds me too, if you don't mind, one of the other things that you all had asked was, do other cities, and will we see and anticipate an influx of permits when it comes in? All the cities I spoke to said that did not happen with them at all. And we don't expect it here either, because not only is it we already allow it, we're kind of adding regulations and restrictions. So.
And I do also want to mention, though, I know that it was mentioned that it's an affordable way to look at this, and I agree, but also the people that had ADUs on their property, their Jackson County assessments jumped super high. So I think people need to keep that in mind too, that if they're going to do an ADU, the county unfairly assessed so many people, and that's I don't know that it makes it super affordable and at that point, but.
Okay, so the ADU discussion has gone from last committee to this one, and you and I were on both. But I want to tell the committee members, if there's something on here that you're not comfortable with, if you're questioning what's being done, now's the time to speak up so that we can get this right. And don't feel like the decisions made today with this aren't up for change later. Because we can always say, okay, we're comfortable putting them on this size lots. You know, maybe we want just 1 acre or half acres. We're not comfortable with smaller lots downtown. Now's the time to talk about it and speak up, and all comments are appreciated and welcome.
Oh.
Councilmember Hodges.
So I actually agree with what Councilmember Pryor was saying. I guess in my head, I was thinking that I was thinking back to last meeting when we discussed this, and I thought, obviously I'm wrong, but I was thinking that we were saying that we would like for it to be a cohesive blanket for the whole city, where it's not, we're making special rules for downtown and saying, we'll allow extra here, but we're going to take care of our, you know, in the suburbs a little. I don't like that. I like it to be what goes for them goes for us in D4. Like, I don't know. I just like, if it's required for my neighborhood, it should be required for me. As the same expectations, I think, should be required of all districts. I get that it's a different vibe, but I still think we should have the same expectations. So I would like to see that change. Sorry, I feel like we want this. No, we want this. So thank you for everything you've done. I really appreciate it. But I personally would like to see that it's just blanket, consistent for everybody, every district.
So for clarity for me, thank you for that. I appreciate that. The only difference would be the language that we're proposing right now for if you're in Old Downtown Lee Summit and 1,000 square foot, it's 500. So everything else is though the same.
Okay.
So your thought is remove this little piece I highlighted. Okay.
Yeah, that was my thought, but
Thank you. Guys, but that helps. Thank you.
And I want to hear from Councilmember Pryor on that, just because she represents that area. Well, and because she's a nice person.
So I think it's tough. Even I do represent the area. I know that I've heard from people that say that they want an ADU and they're super excited for it. And I've also heard from people that are completely against it, no matter what the regulation is. So I don't know. It's tough gauging exactly what people would want. Personally, I would like to see anything less than 15,000 square feet, not even be able to do an ADU. I know 500 square feet is pretty small, but I would like to see a minimum lot size and have it be right around 15,000 square feet. But I'm also okay with something like this. I don't know. I guess on that I'll just go with what everyone else wants. I'm not super tied into that. My big thing is I just want to make sure that no matter what size the lot is, that stormwater is considered with all of these, and even extra measures if needed. But that's.
Oh, Mr. Elam's coming up to help us out. Help us find some compromise here, Mr. Elam.
I would say, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Just a couple of quick kind of questions and clarifications on that. With the size restriction on 15,000 square feet, would you want that related to all accessory structures, such as detached garages and sheds as well? And just trying to get at the root of is it the accessory structures, or is it the use of the ADU as to what we're looking to regulate? Because that could have other impacts throughout the rest of the area.
I guess it's cramming a bunch of people living on a tiny lot. I feel like that just kind of is maybe not necessarily the look that I feel like we're trying to go for in downtown. But no, I mean, not with sheds. And I know, as Mrs. Nassif has said, there's a lot of restrictions with the 20 feet. And so, I don't know. I'm on that one, I'm pretty neutral. I'll go with whatever I guess everyone else wants on that one.
Let me ask you a question on this. Show me again the one part that it's that residential lots in downtown, which are less than 15,000 square feet. Okay, that's what I thought.
And because the other concern another way to think about that too is, I don't want to throw a wrench in it.
Oh, it's all right. Go ahead.
Turn my
Go ahead.
microphone.
There's
Is there a
always
trap
two
door
wrenches
under
in
here
this.
that I can just go into?
Go ahead.
Instead of doing a size, if you're really concerned about stormwater or you think that may be something that isn't sufficiently addressed, then it could be dip the toe in the water, so to speak, in the stormwater, and the ADUs for downtown be attached only, or above a existing garage, or so then you're not adding an additional detached structure to the lot.
I actually like that. I like that a lot.
Brian,
I believe that may be the current regulation.
And the current, yeah, well, for lofts. The loft says right now, if it's 15,000 square foot, that it has to be attached above a garage. So we could just keep them and make sure it doesn't, for any type of.
So can you explain it to me again?
So right now, the current language in downtown, the type of ADU allowed is a loft above a garage on a lot that's 15,000 square foot or more.
It already has to be in existence, or you could
build a garage though, you could always build a garage.
But what's the point? What's the difference in building a garage versus building a structure someone's going to live in?
I mean, not a lot. It's a little more expensive. I mean, not a lot of people are going to go out and just build a garage and then convert it on top of that. So they would not be able to go build an ADU straight step one. They'd have to build a garage and then come back and convert it, and you're just talking a lot of additional.
That to me just seems like a lot of additional steps.
It would be.
But if it's attached, it could also be, I have a one car garage house, or a garage that already in existence. I'm converting that into an ADU. Or I have a basement that has outside access. I could convert that into an ADU.
Yes.
So those are also attached.
So it has to be attached to the house, or
to be attached to what I'm suggesting is would be attached to the principal structure. So either by the attic or by underground, the basement, or a garage that exists that's attached, or attach itself. But then it wouldn't be a separate on the lot.
I think that kind of eliminates the whole affordable house. No, I personally, I don't know that that's necessarily something that we need to.
Mr. Elam, you look like you want to talk.
I just had one other kind of comment or clarification on the half acre, the half acre lot and then the PDP requirement. So I believe, if I remember the conversation from last meeting, part of the reason why that was spelled out like that was for situations such as New Longview, where an entire subdivision has come in and wanting to do that as part of the overall neighborhood and allowing an opportunity for that to exist through the preliminary development plan process. So it was more than just a single lot by lot situation. It did apply and open up for entire subdivisions that are going for a different kind of look and feel to come forward.
Amy, go down to the language regarding downtown. So it's different. What's different about it being downtown is that it can't be bigger than 500 square feet or half the house. That's the real difference, or half the size of the house, right? Isn't that the real difference?
That's the difference. Yes.
Okay. So you're having smaller ADUs downtown because the houses are small.
They still have setback requirements that are by district, just like any other throughout the area. They still would have architecture requirements, only one allowed per lot, not allowed to be an STR or short-term rental. They'd still have the same height requirement that it can't exceed the principal structure. Those other things would be similar.
Okay, Councilmember Pryor.
So on other half acre lots, so outside of downtown, this still applies though, the 1,000 square feet or more than 50% of the principal structure's floor area. That still applies even on a half acre lot if they choose to do that, correct?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Okay. And then so downtown, they can, if the lot size is less than 15,000, that's when the 500 applies. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Councilmember Felker.
you all have been talking through this. I'm fine with debating changes. I'm fine with how it's drafted. I just wanted to comment.
Yeah. I mean, Councilmember Pryor represents downtown. I'm going to defer to your judgment on what your constituents want, and unless you want to try and make an amendment, you can make.
Madam Chairman,
Yeah, Josh.
there's no ordinance in front of you,
Oh,
so you
well,
just be really
okay.
giving us
Yeah.
guidance. 'Cause
Sorry. Yeah.
The
Okay.
motion tonight
Yeah.
is to move on in the public process. So.
Fine.
Either way, I'm
We're
going to do
all
what you
ready to
say,
go.
yes.
Yeah.
I guess we could, I mean, it's going to be coming before council, so if we don't like it at that point, but it's also going to be going before planning commission, correct?
Will it
Yes.
come back to us again or go straight to planning?
Planning Commission and City Council.
Okay. So
So
I
we
mean,
could,
go ahead.
I was thinking we could always leave it like this, see what planning commission, I guess, says, and see how, if they like it, and then when it comes back before council, or could we,
Just a quick process note, there will be a public hearing associated with this at both the Planning Commission and the City Council as well.
Oh, yep. Okay.
UDO amendments have a long process.
2 public hearings. Given that, are you comfortable sending this on?
I am.
Okay, well,
I mean, I understand not liking that part too. It's tough. Even as I'm speaking right now, I'm getting text messages saying, do it under, or don't do away with the half acre and then do away with the half acre. I don't know. I guess I'm good with this. So is there anything saying like we could, or I guess even if it goes before council, can we do something like this and then like revisit it in 6 months or a year and seeing if we're having like an influx of ADUs?
can I, I'll let staff off the hook for this one. It's easier to make it more strict now and loosen it later than loosen it, open the floodgates, and then try and tighten it up. Do you guys disagree with that? Is that accurate? It's harder to, I mean, wouldn't it be easier if we say, let's take this out now and revisit this in 6 months or a year, rather than go, oh, let's pass all this, and then, in 6 months or a year, maybe we'll take it out and just do away with it.
Yes.
Maybe I'm wrong.
But if I can interject my own opinion, I think what Amy has heard from surrounding cities is there wasn't a just influx of a ton of ADUs.
Yeah.
And to me, that provision really gets to the issue of cramming people in a small space. I think it addresses that concern.
Okay. I'm fine with that. I think it's harder if you, to tighten up regulations later, and you've already loosened them up. Or, I don't know that we're loosening up,
I was
I
gonna say, I
guess.
think we're
We don't-
tightening them up right now.
Yeah. Okay, I'm looking at it wrong. All right, well, I think we're good to send it on, and we'll have the public hearings and see how those go.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, Councilmember Hodges is gonna have the same comments, and that's all right. And now we're moving on to 5E, presentation of the Unified Development Ordinance updates.
Yes, these are not as exciting, but I will try to go through them quickly for you and make them as interesting as possible. So we had a series of UDO updates that we want to make. These help further our goals of the comprehensive plan also through our, so many goals, through the work that we do with the development community, economic development and land use goals and such. And this is the overview, quick check for you. There's several different small pieces. These were all ones that were more housekeeping is what we call. So while we did reach out to a couple folks, these did not require like big overhauls, lots of research or stakeholder engagement, things of that nature. It's just to clean up inconsistencies and to improve clarity, mostly in some of our processes, and be responsive to what we've heard from the development community. So I'll go through these. And I also, what we did, so in all of these, I have the title up at the very top, and then the bottom right-hand corner, if anyone was interested or bored, it's a hyperlink to the exact section of code for you as well. So first one was notice to surrounding property owners. Currently, our notices are required to be sent by regular mail. And we need to update that to be certified mail. That is what all other cities do to ensure state statute requirements are met. We already ask our development community to provide most of the time the certified mail. And we also reach out to them and they're like, yeah, everybody in the metro requires that except for us. So certified mail, and leaving it as certified too, because it gives options for an electronic certify, which is less expensive too. Preliminary development plans and applications. This is our current language on what the submission requirements are when we're talking about building elevations and architecture. And what this doesn't have in here is it doesn't talk about color. So all of our developers will provide us with color renderings, or color elevations, which is what we need to really be looking at depicting the scale and how the exterior materials play with each other and work with each other, and they're compatible on the buildings. And so we just want to clarify those expectations. And so the language in red is what we're adding just to clarify what we're already getting from everyone, was that those elevations are in color, drawn to the architectural scale to include those dimensions that we always need and ask for in our comment letters anyway. And then again, just the only new languages in this red, including the notation about the building materials to be used and the roofs and screening equipment. Again, things we already always ask for. Most other cities have too. Developers provide to us already, so just clarifying that. The contents and submission again. One thing we don't have right now is we have a really great application and form and people can submit online, but we don't have a narrative statement that we require. And a project narrative really helps a great deal in a lot of different types of projects, just to get some kind of statement from or summary from the applicant of what it is they're proposing or why. So we do often ask for it, so we just wanted to add that into our application step as well. And if I go too fast, let me know. This section here gets into our modification from district regulations. And a narrative statement for modifications is required. But whenever someone's going through zoning or PDP process, they can request some modifications. And what we found was there's just a link to the wrong article in our code currently. Article 4 goes to zoning districts, and we need it to go to Article 2 is where our new procedures are. So just some housekeeping items, not a big deal. And the modifications can be from either zoning district or development regulations. So just wanted to clarify that. It does not change the type of modifications you can get or the qualifying requirements. Again, our current language here for modifications, the only change is it just linked to an outdated article. Consideration of preliminary development plans. This kind of reminds me of a really long text you might get from your family that's like this long, and you're like, why didn't you just call me? So it's much easier on the public, on homeowners, property owners, for readability to break it up into sections. Just to improve that. And then also there was just a couple redundant areas that weren't necessary. Does not change the requirement or anything at all, or the process steps. Helps to clarify for the reader what our requirements are. The tree conservation plan section, this one's just really easy. The sentence says a preliminary plan may be submitted in certain circumstances below, but nothing below says what those circumstances are. I think below was just from a different time. So literally all we ask is we just need to remove that sentence. It just says look below. So easy stuff, but we have that process and want to update it all. Tree conservation plan. I think at one point we had, sometimes cities will call them protection plans or conservation plans. Our entire UDO calls them conservation plans. So just want to update the verbiage because one little area had just the little error there. Just want to clarify that. Acceptable plant materials. This is one that developers ask us for help with quite a bit. Our minimum caliper right now is 3 inches at time of planting, which is actually pretty tough and pretty expensive to find. And a lot of times you can't find that stock. So just update it to what current standards in the area and what typical is. It's more 2.5 inches, and that's what we've been seeing and what people actually come in with all their proposals with right now. You're curious what a large deciduous or a small deciduous was, threw that in. And then getting closer here to the end. So we also have high impact screening requirements. But the fun thing is that we require a fence to go through the middle of our screening. We don't want that. That's a technical term. It's a big red X. So we want to get rid of the fence being required through there. Sometimes there should be a fence or a berm as an option, but you don't want it to go in the middle of the plantings. That causes lots of problems for lots of people and maintenance and such. And then here's just some examples of some berms and the differences there with the fence on the other side and not in between. And that was it. So low-hanging fruit, but very important and would be very helpful to our developer
That was
community,
good, and I assume you just passed another test for your.
I'm not sure if anything what I said was accurate, but I'm going to go with that it was. So yes, I'll say
Y'all
yes.
should have scorecards. I'm wondering, we've had a couple of projects come through where they have asked to use materials that aren't on our list of materials.
Yes.
How do you all go about updating those? Or,
Um,
when you get so many projects, don't you go, maybe we should add these?
Certainly do. There's a big Post-it note on my wall right now. Actually, we're starting to keep track of all those. Whenever we get any kind of modifications or variances, if we start seeing a pattern, we want to start updating that. So we've had conversations about doing that actually recently, but industry standards change pretty often. So right now, the modification process is a great process because it lets us keep up to date and not be stuck where we don't have an option or an outlet for that until further down the road, we are going to be updating and looking at our design regulations.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, do you have anything to add to that, or did she do a good job?
Deputy did a good job.
Both.
All right. Oh, yeah, Council. Yeah.
So I have a question about building materials. Do we have so there's an apartment complex in Lee Summit that's new and it looks terrible. I've took pictures, so I've sent pictures to a couple of the council members, but do we have I don't even know how to say this, but a minimum grade or niceness that they have to use on specific buildings? I know vinyl siding is an approved building material. Is there can they use the worst grade, or do we have a minimum grade to protect some of the things going up from looking bad 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road?
No, our approved list of materials just says stuff like vinyl siding, brick, things like that. That would be another level of sophistication we would have to go to from where we are now.
Yeah, but what does help with that, the color elevation requirement on here helps with that a great deal because the color elevations will start allowing us also, and development community has been really great about providing that and diving into those questions with us, is it does help us see the fenestration, the architectural enhancements and the features and how the different materials will play better off of each other. And what we did add, it's we're dipping our toe right now in it a little bit. Because what I have here is we added on the top here to architectural scale and include the dimensions for the relationship, is because to your point, there's certain times with certain types of building form that you want to have. Sometimes, metal as an accent piece works great, but other times metal as a primary piece works really well too. So having the various relationships with the dimensions will help get those conversations and get talking a little bit more into those things, so that you don't have flat facades or those flat envelopes looking, or materials that actually aren't compatible with each other for that form. Does that help or make sense? At least
That
for
does.
right now.
Well, it does. This particular apartment complex just had a siding falling off and wavy. It just looked bad, and it was just recently built. And it's kind of disappointing to see. But so sometimes when you go to some cities, I know over the summer, about a month ago, we were in Franklin, Tennessee, and a lot of their buildings are built of brick. And when you go over to Overland Park, a lot of their apartment complex, instead of having, vinyl siding as an accent, they have a lot of brick and a lot of stone. What are they doing that we're not doing to attract or to encourage nicer building materials versus us that we're starting to see a lot more vinyl siding and a lot.
Well, some of that's different though. So some of the brick and the stone that you see, sometimes the brick is a brick veneer, or it's actually like a faux material, like a Nichiha material, like Nichiha wood, or in some of the architectural metal panels. And so sometimes when you see that, it does from far away too give the appearance as to that it's a more of a solid or like a masonry type material. And it's also in the application. Sometimes you can use that vinyl siding, or there's other kinds of, if you want to say lower class materials, but when you apply it correctly, like sometimes when you apply or use the stucco correctly, it actually can give a really great look. So sometimes it's in the application as well as knowing if it's a true material or if it's like a veneer or a faux material. I have a lot of architecture. So, but I know that some places on the other side, like Kansas, will do allow those veneers or the applications to be differently if it's not a true material. It could be a faux material.
Do they typically just hold up better? I don't know. I feel like
it depends. A lot of it's in its application as well.
Okay.
And depends on the type of siding used too, and is it done as an accent piece or what the percentage of that might be as well.
Okay. Well, and then this is kind of unrelated. If we see something that doesn't look good, but it's not necessarily a code violation, is there anything we can do?
Those are always questions you can ask us during the PDP process, and when those come through. If when we have our presentations and they do provide architecture in those packets, if there's things that you're concerned about or something, you can ask then at that time.
Okay, thank you.
We'd welcome feedback if you see something and say, hey, I don't want this to ever happen again. Something.
I'll send you I can send you the pictures.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Knowing
Thank
that,
you.
then we kind of know what the interest is or what the what areas we should avoid or be looking closer at. Always helps a great deal.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Elam?
Two quick things.
Yeah.
If there is a piece of siding hanging off of a building or something like that, that very well it could be a neighborhood services violation, and we can talk to them about repairing that.
So this was just really wavy and not painted and I don't know that. Yeah.
I don't know the details about the situation, but if it's exposed or something like that, if there's a hole in it, and there's access to the elements or nuisance animals or something like that, that very well would be a neighborhood services violation. And then on the vinyl siding, kind of just comment in general, we do have different material standards for office, commercial, industrial, and for residential as well. And vinyl siding, just that material in particular, is a conditional material, and it's really only as allowed by the planning commission and governing body.
Okay, thank you.
I think you did a great job.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate the information. Roundtable, does anybody have anything on the dais? No?
So I'm sorry, Chair, can I ask, so are we good to move forward to move forward and advance
Yeah.
or was there a question?
Yeah.
Okay, great,
I'm
thank
sorry.
you.
Yeah, please do. No roundtable up here. I appreciate everyone's, oh, sure.
Okay, so this question is, and I actually don't know if this is the correct committee to ask it in, but regarding home-based businesses, what does, at what point, so I've gotten a couple complaints in my district, but at what point, what constitutes too much traffic generated or too many employees being at a specific home-based business, or even a home-based business adding on to their house to expand their home-based business with a pretty significant add-on? I know the Missouri state law changed and I know that, but at what constitutes too much, or where is that?
I can start by talking about the change to the Missouri law, and then we'll let Shannon and others answer what I think is your main question. There was a statutory change last year that enacted a new package of laws dealing with no impact home-based businesses, and it has a very specific definition of what a no impact home-based business is. And then for those things that qualify as no impact home-based businesses, there's a restriction on what the city can do. when that law was passed, we analyzed that statute thoroughly and we took a long look at our city code. And the issue that we were analyzing was, do we need to change anything in our city code to comply with that statute? We determined that we do not. For example, the city does not require a home-based business license. We require a general business license. Can't require a home-based business license, and we don't have something like that on the books. So that's an example of we don't have anything on the books that we need to change. And in the end, we decided we don't see anything in our city code that conflicts with that new statute, and we'll continue to analyze the issue as it comes forward. And if somebody presents to us a particular situation where they can point to a provision in our code that we have a problem and we determine that it does conflict with that new state law, we'll visit that issue and bring something forward. And I believe it would come to this committee. So this is probably the proper place to ask that question. So that's the answer with respect to the new state statute that came into effect last year. And then I'll let Shannon go ahead and address the rest of it.
Okay, Shannon McGuire, Senior Planner. So with regards to employees that are not residing on site are limited to one. So anything above that is currently prohibited by the ordinance. With regards to the traffic, the home-based business must maintain a residential appearance. So if they're producing additional traffic above and beyond what you would see at a normal residence, that's something that'd be more suited for a commercial site. So we could address that as well. With regards to expanding the business, the UDO currently does regulate the total square footage that can be assigned to that home-based business within that home. So if they're expanding for the sole purpose of the home-based business and it does exceed that regulation of how many square feet allowed, in that, and it's going to be based on the home size too. So it's a percentage. I believe it's 20%.
Okay, can I show you the specific business and lot that I've been getting emails about?
Let's not
after
do it
after this.
after the
Yeah,
meeting.
after.
To see if it's zoned, even if it's zoned, even commercial or residential or what it's. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I just want, thank you, Shannon.
And then I will
Yeah.
also just kind of one of your earlier comments about what a T&Z zoning it is, a transitional neighborhood zone. And that is a mixed zone where you can have residences and straight office use in residential homes. So if it's in that zoning district, it's a little different.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Isn't that like just up Douglas, like just past the church? Isn't some of that T&Z?
Some of it, yes. It's a ring around our downtown core.
Yeah, okay.
So
All right.
it's basically designed to transition from a commercial use into the neighborhood with a softer approach instead of just a hard commercial residential.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Committee, I appreciate everybody's comments and work tonight. It was a good meeting. Staff, do you have anything for us? Any roundtable? Nope. I appreciate your time too. I know it was a long meeting, but I think we got a lot done. So I adjourn this meeting at 7:00. Thank you.